We have all been there before, where you have somebody telling you of a specific dieting program that they're following and how much success they are seeing. And then the next day you have somebody else telling you about this different dieting program where the success that they are seeing seems even more desirable, and it is a way better protocol in comparison to the one that you previously heard about. It's rather confusing, is it not, with all of these different dieting interventions that are floating around? How do you know what the best protocol is for you to implement for yourself? Now, some diets that you may be contemplating, and keep in mind that this is not an exhausted list, are things like maybe the keto diet, carnivore diet, the vegan diet, clean eating, intermittent fasting, macro counting, my personal favorite as of late, the 72-hour fast. So let's break some of these down. Some may actually be very successful on a keto diet, and this likely is due to the increased amount of fat and protein macronutrients that one is consuming, that it keeps them feeling nice and full and satiated, that by the time they're ready to go eat their next meal, maybe they're ready to go to bed. Some may be successful with the carnivore diet, and that is likely just due to the fact of the increased amount of protein that someone is consuming. Protein keeps you feeling nice and full, nice and satiated, but as well too, the individual likely doesn't have that much time left in a day to continue eating. I don't know about you, but eating a steak is very time consuming, and me personally, not really something that I want to be consuming on a daily basis, maybe even sometimes multiple times during the day. What about vegans? Why are they so successful? Well, depending on the person's motivator as to why they would adopt a vegan diet. You know, me personally, I actually used to follow a vegetarian diet. And the personal reasons behind that were due to the fact that I just love animals, and consuming animals just wasn't something that I felt was morally in line with my values. Unfortunately for me, it was just unsustainable. But if that's your reason, I totally understand, and you can be very successful with this diet. Other people, it may be due to some of the fear mongering that goes on in specific Netflix documentaries that causes people to want to reduce the amount of animal products that they're consuming. Whatever your reason may be, when you are adopting a vegan diet, you're very limited to the amount of foods that you can consume. What about clean eating? Why are some people successful with that intervention? Well, assuming you're defining clean eating as eating whole, nutrient-dense foods, and you're not washing your chicken breast with Dawn dish soap, when you're consuming an adequate amount of fruits and vegetables and a sufficient amount of fiber, that's going to keep you feeling nice and full, nice and satiated, where the person may not feel as hungry, and it reduces that desire to consume even more food. All right, we can go on here and continue to speculate as to why some people are successful with a given diet over others, but there's one important thing, one important common denominator that all of these dieting protocols have in common. Does anybody know what I'm gonna write here? Can you guys see that? Probably not, but it says calorie deficit. If you are seeing results implementing a keto diet, you are in a calorie deficit. If you are seeing results on the carnivore diet, you are in a calorie deficit. If you're seeing results adopting a vegan diet, you're in a calorie deficit. If you are clean eating and you're seeing results, you're in a calorie deficit. If you are intermittent fasting, if you're counting your macros, even if you see results on a 72-hour fast, you are in a calorie deficit. There is enough evidence and good information out there that we should know by now. In order for you to achieve fat loss results, you need to be in a calorie deficit. How you drive that deficit is up to you. You can do it by restricting your meals to an 8-hour window through intermittent fasting, where there typically isn't enough time left in a day to binge or overconsume additional calories. You can starve yourself through a 72-hour fast, where you only lose maybe about 2 to 3 pounds of actual body fat. You don't believe me? Let's do the math. Let's legit do the math here. We're assuming the 3,500 calorie rule. If you haven't heard this before, it is where 1 pound of fat is roughly around 3,500 calories. So if your maintenance calories are 3,500 calories and you don't eat that for 3 whole days, you're only gonna lose 3 pounds of body fat, which is pretty good in a 3-day period. But if you have more weight to lose than that, you can't starve yourself forever. But for most people, their maintenance calories are a lot lower than 3,500 calories, meaning you likely aren't gonna lose more than 3 pounds. Let's say your maintenance calories are 2,200, right? Maintain at 2,200. That's where you need to consume 2,200 calories in a day to maintain your current weight. If we times that over a 3-day period, right? Times over 3 days, that's 6,600 calories that you aren't consuming for 3 days. 6,600 calories. So we want to divide that by the 3,500, which is 1 pound of actual body fat. So if we divide that by 3,500, 1.89 pounds. If you do a 72-hour fast, you are likely to lose 1.89 pounds if your maintenance calories are 2,200. If your maintenance calories are more, plug in the numbers and you can see. But at a maximum amount, if your maintenance calories are around 3,500, not going to lose more than 3 pounds of body fat. Again, not a bad short-term investment. Long-term investment, probably not the best idea. And I know that some of you are thinking like, well, my friend did it and they lost 10 pounds. I promise you that the majority of that is just water weight that unfortunately the individual is going to gain back once they start eating food again. You can count your macros and restrict your calories where you eat foods that you enjoy within moderation, but you also ensure that you don't go over your calorie budget for the day. Kind of the same thing that we all do when it comes to banking. You know, we all have so much money that we're able to spend, and we know that if we go blow all of our money at Lululemon, we're gonna go broke, we can't pay our bills, so we gotta be responsible and ensure that we don't overspend. Clearly, I am biased here, and I encourage most people, not all, most people to adopt the skill sets of learning how to count their macronutrients. This isn't for everybody, but after coaching for over 10 years and implementing various types of dieting protocols for my clients and my athletes, counting one's macronutrients I have found to be the most sustainable when it comes to one's ability to actually maintaining their results. But that's not to say that you can't adopt any of these other methods. If you want to adopt the keto diet, then adopt the keto diet. If you want to eat clean, be my guest. If you want to starve yourself for 3 days, well, have fun with that. But how can you decide for you what is going to be the best method to implement? Because I think so many people are getting wrapped up in looking at what worked well for somebody else and implementing a protocol based off of that thought process alone. All right, last little bit on the whiteboard here. When you are deciding for yourself which protocol you should implement, it's important to understand that sustaining your motivation is extremely important. And in order for one to actually sustain their motivation, there are 3 psychological needs that need to be met. And those are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. You need to ensure that the protocol, the tasks, the goals, the habits, whatever it is that you're trying to implement for yourself are meeting these 3 psychological needs. If they aren't, then sustaining motivation is going to be an uphill battle. Let's break these 3 things down. Autonomy is where you feel like you are in control. You are in the driver's seat. You have a level of decision-making and independence in your nutrition protocol. If you're following a meal plan, you may be motivated to implement that in the beginning, but do you feel like you have the independence to eat the foods that you like? Maybe somebody gave you a meal plan based off of the foods that they like, and it's nice because it's new, it's fresh, and it's easy to follow, but if you don't feel like you have the independence of what you're able to put in your mouth, sustaining the motivation of adhering to that protocol is gonna be a challenge. So finding a program where you feel like you have independence for decision making is extremely important. The next one is competence. The thing with competence is that for most protocols, you're not gonna feel this right away. So it's important to prioritize these other 2 things and ensure that competence is a byproduct later on. An example of this is if you're tracking your macronutrients. Now with tracking your macronutrients, you do have the independence of eating what you would like. You just have to ensure that it fits within your calorie budget. But it's a skill set. Nobody knows how to track their macros right away. You know how many YouTube videos I had to watch to learn how to actually track my macros? It takes time. It's a skill set where that level of competence is lacking in the beginning. But because I was able to ensure that these other 2 psychological needs have been met, the competence level came later on. And because of that, adherence has not been an issue. The last one is relatedness. And I think that this is the most important one, and honestly, the one that most people struggle with. This is where you feel like you are being being heard, you have a community, you have support. If you don't have a supportive spouse who is encouraging you to follow this new dieting protocol that you're implementing, you're not having that level of support that is needed in order for you to sustain the motivation to be successful. This is where I think other diets come into play, such as the 72-hour fast. I'm not trying to discourage anybody from doing this. If that's something that you like and it's helpful for you and it kind of initiates the starting process of your journey of health and fitness, by all means, go for it. I sincerely, legit mean that. I think there's a level of relatedness that comes with implementing some of these short-term protocols or some of these more extreme protocols, such as the 72-hour fast or 75 hard. There's a community there, right? And that's where people get that psychological need that is often lacking when somebody goes to diet. Because I'll tell you this, like when I go to track my macros and I tell people that, automatically people are like, oh, you're obsessive. I'm not gonna lie, there's not always a level of relatedness there. There's not always a community available. And that's where we have to find ways to create relatedness. And that's where I get it when it comes to some of these more extreme protocols, especially during the new year. But taking the time to ensure that you are in a positive environment and community and you have the support that you need is very important. So really taking the time to prioritize these 3 psychological needs when you are trying to select what dieting protocol you're going to commit to moving forward. Because if these 3 things aren't actually being prioritized, you're not going to sustain your motivation so you can actually adhere to the protocol long term, which is often needed depending what your goals are. At the end of the day here, pick a protocol that works best for you, that fulfills these psychological needs, and something that you can easily stick to for as long as possible. If you can see yourself adhering to a given protocol for 5 years, like 5 years from now, can you ask yourself, like, yeah, I can see myself continuing down this path that I am on, then that's the right protocol for you. Because at the end of the day, this is a lifestyle. We have to remember that short-term success often yields temporary results. And I say 5 years because for a lot of people, fat loss doesn't happen all in one go. You're not just gonna lose the 20 pounds in 12 weeks and then you're set forever. Some people that happens for, but it's not normal. It's not typical. And why is that? Because life gets in the way. You're gonna have a wedding, you're gonna have a vacation, you're gonna have family come visit, it's gonna be summer all of a sudden, it's gonna be the holidays. There are always gonna be reasons that hold you back from adhering to long-term progress when it comes to fat loss. So that's why it doesn't typically occur all in one shot, all in one linear go. Your timeline rarely goes according to plan. And I promise you that this journey that you're on right now, it's probably gonna take a lot longer than you think and you expect. And that's why it's so important to not only pick a plan that you can see yourself adhering to 5 years from now, but to also make sure that these 3 psychological needs are being met, because that's what's going to allow you to find enjoyment in the process and in your journey.